Da 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 dee da dee dee do. What's up, my dudes? NBA 2K for motocross, yeah. So, I figured out the disconnect. Now I understand why I can't understand these official Monster Energy Supercross video game fanboys. I figured it out, like no joke. Like being dead serious. I'm not trying to be, you know, all crazy, sarcastic, whatever. Like I actually figured out why there is such a misunderstanding between us two. See, it's not so much about simulator versus arcade. It's way more about like average motocross gamer to hardcore motocross gamer. And I think what makes it like that is because most of your average motocross gamers, all they really play on is consoles. Like, they don't really have any clue what goes on with PC motocross gaming. They just don't. They don't understand how there's an unlimited world of content with replica tracks and replica bike graphics and replica gear and hell, even replica dynos on MX Simulator. You know, we've got all kinds of replica stuff within the PC community of motocross gaming. And if you haven't ever really gotten into that, you just wouldn't even understand it. But what I did was I sort of took my mind back to where a time where I didn't even know what PC motocross gaming was. And what it did was, even though I don't agree with what these official Monster Energy Supercross, the video game fanboys are doing, or their opinions, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I will say that I understand how they could potentially think the way they are thinking, right? So now I can actually understand how that could possibly happen. So I thought back to a time when I had no clue about PC motocross gaming. All I knew was Reflex on consoles, and that was it. And then I kind of went to a live a little bit after that. But, like, if you're just a console motocross gaming fan, like, what's the last game you played? MX vs. ATV Encore, which is, like, just a bunch of rehashed old tracks from older motocross games that you've already played 1,000 times. And you've got MXGP3, and that's pretty much all you've really been playing. And so, whenever they announced this official Monster Energy Supercross game, it's like, whoa, that's amazing, that's crazy. We actually are getting real life bikes, real life riders, real life tracks, and that's a crazy thing to people that don't understand the PC gaming realm. See, that's how that disconnect gets created, because all of us more hardcore motocross gaming fans, it's not really all that crazy to us because we've been experiencing this whole replica thing for a while now. We really have been, with all the replica tracks and the replica, every aspect of all the stuff on MX Simulator and the PC version of Reflex. So that's where it, like, we get so off on opinions, right? It's because these people are super hyped up because they don't ever get anything like this. They don't ever get this on consoles, really. I mean, they have experienced that to a certain extent, like I've said in past videos with, you know, the Ricky Carmichael, Ryan Villapoto, James Stewart in Reflex, and you had a lot of, hell, James Stewart's replica track on a live. You had a lot of the Supercross replica tracks in MX vs. ATV Encore, or MX vs. ATV Supercross, my bad, I get confused. It's like the same fucking game over and over. But, you know, we've had this, but not like, not in the same, I guess, level that the official Monster Energy Supercross game is for console-based games only. We have had that for PC-based stuff, user-created content, but when it comes to console only, this is the first one that's got it kind of all in one game. So that's why people are sort of losing their minds over it. Whereas, like, us PC people, it's like, I mean, that's cool, but, you know, it's not anything too crazy. So that's kind of where that comes from. So, like, they're excited because it's, you know, you got a Monster Energy Kawasaki in your console game, and you're playing on the actual real-life tracks on your console game. And I understand that. I do. Now it makes a little more sense to me why they were thinking like that, even though, like I'm saying, I don't necessarily agree with getting hyped up to that level and such. My opinion still holds 1,000% on everything I've ever said in my past, but like, I'm not by any means going a different way from that, so don't ever get that thought in your head. But what I'm saying is now it just makes sense to me. Now it makes sense why there is such a gap between how we're thinking here, because it's the gap between the PC motocross fans and the people that have only been on console gaming. So really what I wanted to talk about in this video is the fact that NBA 2K for motocross is kind of how they're seeing this new official Monster Energy Supercross game. That's how they're seeing it. And no matter how much I think that's such a cool idea to possibly have that NBA 2K for motocross, right? Who couldn't love that idea? And how much I think it would be so cool to have, and how much I think it should be a thing. I just don't know how actual possible that would be to get it to like how an NBA 2K really is. That's my whole thing about it. Like, I mean, you know, a lot of people think they're going to start coming out with the official Monster Energy Supercross game like every year, and it's going to have every year of tracks and every year of riders and whatnot. That's what a lot of people really think this game is going to become, but I just don't know how many years people are going to continue to buy a $60 game that only has stadium Supercross tracks on it. Like, I mean, you can continue to improve the game over and over and over, but it's going to have more drastic changes to the game for people to continue to buy it year in and year out. I mean, it's fun to be like, whoa, this is the first one, and so everyone's like super excited. But when you get 3 or 4 years down the line and we're on the official Monster Energy Supercross, you know, 5 or whatever, and you're still only racing on the AMA Supercross tracks for $60, I just don't know how many more people is still going to stick around for that. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's where the difference between an NBA 2K and this official Monster Energy Supercross game really comes down to, right? So the main attraction for people to buy the NBA 2K type shit is because you've got all of the stats of the official players. Steph Curry, McFlurry, dude. And it like really keeps up with the teams, keeps up with all the stats of the players, that you can actually go in there and play whoever, LeBron James and against Steph Curry, and it's like be like somewhat of an equal matchup from how it was in the real life finals and such. So that's why people, you know, really get attracted to that. But with a motocross game, it's not so much like that, because most of the time with motocross, like, you're not really on a team. It's not like football and basketball. I mean, there are teams in motocross, but it really is way more of an individual sport. I mean, you win because you cross the finish line first, even though there is some little team, somebody can knock someone else out. That's very rare for that to ever happen. Like, someone on your team helped you win directly. That is super, super rare. But for the most part, it is a singular personal sport. It's a racing sport, right? And so for it to have that whole like team orientation thing where it's like, okay, well, I want to, you know, make my character in the game and then play on the Golden State Warriors, and it's as if I was on the Golden State Warriors in real life or whatever. You know, that can kind of be a really positive thing for people to want to buy NBA 2K. Well, you don't even really have that on like a motocross game. It's not even really like that. And if, let's just say they did start adding stats to the particular riders, like, let's just say, you know, Ryan Dungey in the game is super consistent like he is in real life, and then, I don't know, Roxon crashes and breaks his arm in the game, or whatever the fuck, you know. Like, let's just say they had that in there. Well, I mean, like, if you give the option for people to play as those riders, then now it's all about, now you're gonna have to balance it like a damn Call of Duty, or you're gonna have 22 Eli Tomacs out there at one time riding on the track, because us motocross fans would just find the fastest, best thing in the game, and then that's what everyone gets on. You can just look at MX Simulator for that, man. Like, as soon as a new dyno comes out, everybody's on the exact same dyno of a bike. So that's what would happen when it comes to, when you talk about actual stats and things like that. Now, when you go down the route of, like, you create your own rider in the game, and you know, you put your name on the rider, and then You know, you can like make your own team and that sort of thing. All of that is cool. It's a very cool thing. But as far as it having like a actual gameplay integration viability in a sense, that's where I get sort of lost when people try to make the comparison like it's a NBA 2K, because it's not really about the rider stats. And I mean, when you talk about the replica tracks, I mean, then you're like almost talking about a simulator in that sense, because if you're talking about how close the replica tracks are to the real life tracks, well then you have to look at the bike. Doesn't even look realistic at all. The gameplay of the bike physics is not realistic at all. You know, if you're going to start taking it down that route, it's like they're almost trying to make an arcade game with simulator elements to it, but yet it's totally missing out on the most important core aspect to a motocross game, the physics of it. So you see how there's a bit of a confusion and a disrupt with all that, and that's why I just think it's not quite as what you think it would be for like an NBA 2K motocross game. I just don't know how actual possible that really is. I mean, I really don't. Like, I would rather just play a motocross game that had tons of content to it with tracks and, you know, motocross, supercross, trail tracks, enduro cross, and it felt good on the bike. The physics felt good to it. It had a skill gap, so it kept you coming back and playing the game more. The rhythm section on the supercross track actually had somewhat of a difficulty to them, and the motocross tracks, like, you know, the ruts and stuff on that actually was somewhat difficult, and all these different elements, I think, for me anyways, is way more important than like, oh, it's going to turn into an NBA 2K for motocross. I don't know. That's just my opinion on it. I mean, you guys can definitely let me know in the comments. I know you guys will anyways. But, you know, I'm not buying into it as much as some other people are. I mean, it's cool. Like I'm saying, it's a cool thing. And, hell, you might as well have an official Monster Energy Supercross game. You might as well. But, like, for the price it is and the amount of actual track content you're getting, I don't know, man. It's going to have drastic gameplay improvements over the years or something for people to want to keep on buying that. Because if you're just basing it off of like the riders of, let's just say, 2018 and the tracks of 2018, I don't think that's going to have a whole lot of pull to it, man. You know, if they come out with another one next year, like, it's I don't know. It just doesn't have the same pulls that like an NBA 2K has to it. It's what I'm trying to say here. So either way, I appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Later, dudes.